Despite the cover, this book is not a happy read. You're about to watch me read 5-Star Stranger by Kat Tan. I'm going to be updating you periodically with my thoughts as I'm reading the book. I think I have pretty high expectations for this book. Not like, I don't expect it to be like the world's best book, like mind-blowing or anything like that, but I think that it will be really entertaining. I think it's going to be really emotional, and I think it's going to be like a slice of life. So from my understanding, 5-Star Stranger follows our unnamed main character, who's just Stranger or whatever name he takes on, and he's like a rent-a-stranger. So I believe that's something they actually do have in New York, and the story does take place in New York, and his role is basically people hire him and he is whoever they want. Shoulder to cry on, best man at a wedding, a dad, anybody, wingman, anything like that. And that's his role. That's everything he is. And he's like a highly rated person. And so what I imagine is like emotional about the book is that he is like this dad. He's like a hired dad for this little girl. He's not supposed to have like attachments to any of his clients, but I think that in this book he does, and he ends up actually loving the little girl and kind of sees her as his actual daughter. So I'm not entirely sure like what happens, or maybe like he gets found out or something and like the girl's upset. I'm not entirely sure, but that's kind of like my understanding of the book, and I'm pretty excited to read it. So without further ado, let's read 5-Star Stranger. But wait, we already know the drill. This has a dust cover and that has to come off first. However, I don't expect there to be like a super pretty design under it because this is a book of the month book. It'll probably just be like that little stamp, but we'll see like what the colors and stuff are. I'm hoping that it's yellow just to match the like dust cover, because sometimes it doesn't match the dust cover and I'm just like, why? So let's find out. We'll open this together. Okay, that looks yellow. Okay, yellow and blue. Yes, that's good because it matches the cover here. All right, let's read this book for real. So I'm now a little bit more than 100 pages, as well as halfway through 5-Star Stranger, and here are my thoughts so far. This book is exactly what I expected it to be, just following along some guy as he takes on different roles, and we learn a little bit more about him like each chapter. He's nameless, but we learned that he is half Asian. We learned that he had a pretty lonely childhood. It was just him and his mom was really controlling, but he also really loved her, and she was not really around too much. And so it's interesting to see like the memories that he has, and then like what happens to her and why he became like a rent-a-stranger. And he does it as like a redemption of sorts. So he's a way more complex character than I expected. And I always love that. I love when it takes me out by surprise like that. I'm like, whoa, I thought this was just gonna be like following along some guy, but now it's like following along some complex guy with unresolved trauma, and I'm like, yes. Obviously not like it's not like that's not a good thing, but like to read it, I love reading about characters like this and like following their growth, because he does care a lot about Mari and Lily, and they're like his longest term clients. That's the one where he's basically the dad for, and now that Lily's getting a little bit older, like she's 10 now, so he's been in Lily's life for a really, really long time. I believe that he's been there since she was 2, maybe younger. And so she really does think that he's her dad, and he does see her as his daughter. And you can tell by the different interactions and the way that he even says like, my Lily, and all of this, and how he really does hope that he can be there for her for every single big moment of her life. And I'm like, I don't know what's gonna happen, but if he doesn't end up being able to be the dad for Lily, I'm going to be so upset. And it's also really cool to see his other roles that he does. One of them in the other kind of like side story, he's meeting up with this woman named Darlene, and she basically hired him to be her fake brother, but it turns out not to be her fake brother, but to be the brother of a character in a book that she's writing. And so she really wants to kind of like understand it so she can write it better. And so he's playing the brother, but the thing about the brother is that it reminds him too much of himself that he's suppressing. So like it gets really interesting, and their interactions are really interesting as well, because like she's very eccentric of a character, and I think that he likes her, and I think that she's kind of interested in him as well. So we'll see like where their story goes. And then there's other just like random short stories of just him taking on other roles throughout. There was one time he was at a funeral and another rent-a-stranger kind of comes by and it's like, oh, hello. And because he's like one of the longest term rent-a-strangers, is the other rent-a-stranger guy who's like an older guy. And he's the one who, like, these two have basically just been in the game forever. So the old guy comes on over to our main character, who's just a stranger, and is like, hey, so you've been in this game for a long time and I recognize that. So I can give you some advice. And our main character's like, no thanks. And the guy's like, oh, okay, fine. And he like stomps away. So I wonder if we'll see that guy again. We see him kind of just like in other, like in the background and stuff. So interested about his story if we ever do get to learn it. But it is really fun to follow along Stranger, and just as he's dealing with his own problems without actually dealing with them, but like being put now into situations where he does have to deal with them. So it's good stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna continue to read 5-Star Stranger. I have half of this book left, so I will be updating you when I finish the book. So I will see you then with my final thoughts, and I really hope that everything's okay and that Stranger ends up being able to be Lily's dad forever. So we'll find out. There's stuff coming up where Lily thinks that Darlene is his sister because she accidentally saw a message where she's like pretending to be the sister and the brother thing. So it's gonna get complicated. So I'm excited to see what happens, and I will update you when I'm done. Just finished 5-Star Stranger, and I really enjoyed this book. This book, I think that I was less surprised going into it, thinking like it's going to be a serious book, because like the cover's so misleading. You're like, oh, this is gonna be like a happy, cutesy little adventure, but it's not. This book is actually really sad. This book talks a lot about loneliness and being a supporting person instead of being like the hero in your own story, and dealing with just like running away from your own trauma. And I was like, wow, I knew the book wasn't going to be like happy-go-lucky, but I didn't know it was going to be so serious, and it was really well done. For me, this book was executed very well, and what I really loved about it was our main character, who you never get his name, he's just called Stranger, and you're following him along, and you get like these little memories of his about his childhood and his neglectful mother, and how he has no friends, and that he's constantly feeling like that he has to atone for what happened to his mother. He blames himself, and he starts to paint himself as the villain. And as you're reading it, he is never taking care of himself. He's constantly, like, for years and years, is doing this role as a rent-a-stranger to make other people happy. And I thought that that was a really great premise, because it's something super relatable that I feel like the majority of people would understand and have felt before. Because he's like, I'm trying to make people happy, but he's trying to make people happy, but it's a detriment to his own self, to the point where he doesn't even really know who he is. And so he's trying to run away from like who he is, and trying to keep his kind of like perfect world safe and secure in this bubble, but there's holes appearing in this bubble, and there's a lot that happens with it. And I think that it's just like, it's so good, and I really like the pacing of this. I like that it's like a slice of life. You're following along, there's different kind of scenarios and situations that are happening, and you're following along just this one guy as he's growing in a really short book. This book was like 250 pages, And you get so much really great content in such like a short amount of time. And I really like it. I like that this book wasn't drawn on, that it didn't feel like it would take forever. Like, this is one of those books that you sit down and you just devour in like one sit-in. I think the only thing that was kind of weird for me was his decision at the end involving one of his mom's friends. I was like, okay, that's a little bit weird, especially because of like the way he was conditioned to feel about that kind of stuff. His mom was really strict and she was really indifferent about him. And so you see that carry over with him and every single thing about his life that he reveals, and like the reason he wasn't with that bridesmaid at a certain point is because of just the way that he was taught to think about that kind of stuff. So I thought it was really weird that after 10 years that it's just like his mom's friend, and it's like, okay, kind of weird. But that helped him realize everything that he had been running from. Not just that, there were a bunch of events, of course, that like were before that as well. But yeah, that's the only thing I was a little bit like, what the heck? Like, that was kind of weird. In the ending, okay, I'm always like, oh yeah, you know, I love like an ambiguous ending, and then when it actually happens, I'm like, but I want to know like what happened. Like, tell me what happened. This book has that kind of ending that you don't actually know what happened. Where does the story go? And I gave myself a fake spoiler because when I was like flipping through the book to like smell it and stuff, I thought that I saw what the ending was, and that was not close at all. I don't even know how I fake spoilered myself, but I just misread something because I was trying not to read it because I was just trying to flip it. And then I was like, oh, that's the ending. Cool. Okay, it's gonna be like a really nice happy ending. No, that you don't. It's bittersweet. This entire story is bittersweet, and like you're rooting for the guy, but also you're not. But it's like, you know that he's actually a pretty decent person deep down, but he's putting on this persona that he's just doing this as a job and he's just ignoring his own feelings. So yeah, I felt really bad for the guy, and I still feel bad for the guy, and just the whole entire story, and it's like, ah. So yeah, I have a lot of feelings about this book, and I'm so happy that I read it. This was so good. This is so great. I liked this a lot. I definitely recommend this book. I think something else that I really liked about this book was how character driven it was, and how in the head of this guy that you get, and these little bits of information about him, but you never really get all of the info about him, especially like what his mom's story was about. We never found out. And there's just like a bunch of other things. So if you like character driven stories, and really just like, it's not like too much really happens in the book either. It's not about like what happens. It's about really just this guy and how everything falls apart that he had created so perfectly. And if that's the kind of story you like, this is definitely that kind of story. So I'll be awarding 5-Star Stranger a total of 5 stars. This book was excellent in my opinion. I thought it was really well written. I can tell like that the author knows how to weave in words. She had really great things throughout there as well that were just like a nod to like how the economy is, like what it's like working. Like there's like a really subtle nods that wasn't like in your face, but it was really good. And it wasn't like one of those annoying modern day nods. It was like an overarching kind of like view on it that I think would be very timely for like years and years. And it was just like so well done, and I really liked it. I love that we didn't know the character's name. I love following this character and watching the growth of the character. And as much as I hate it, I also loved the ambiguous ending and how the entire book's whole theme is on loneliness and being a secondary person, like you're a supporting person in your own life. And I thought that was just like so well done. It was very good. So the next book that I'm going to be reading is 5 Broken Blades by Mai Corland. Look at these sprayed edges, my friends. Absolutely gorgeous. I really hope that I don't mess up the sprayed edges with my sweaty fingers, but yeah, this is what I'm going to be reading next. So if you're interested in watching me read 5 Broken Blades or any other book that happens to be in my never-ending TBR, I am definitely a mood reader, so I have my big bookshelf of books I want to read, and I just pick whatever my heart tells me to do for that time. So yeah, if you're interested in watching me read any kind of books like that, I have my Goodreads that you can follow to see what kind of books I want to read, and any of my book hauls. So if you haven't already, definitely hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell notification. That way you get notified anytime a new video comes out. If you love books that have these innocent looking covers but are way more than meets the eye, definitely hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!